I see that the red record light is on yet again, and that means that for the first time, we are happily live. As you can see, we've got Donald Hayes here. He is a collector, a pop culture historian, and the last one, which we're going to really dig into, bite into maybe,
so to speak,
Bon
right?
Voyage. So I am Steve, your host here on the show, 713, and we are super excited again to be live for the first time. Hope everybody enjoys it, and we are going to get started by formally welcoming Donald Hayes. How's it going, Donald?
It's going well, Steve. It's nice to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, we are glad to have you on. So let's kind of level set. There's a lot of meat in that description. Any one of those could be something on its own.
Sure.
And you are one person, correct?
Yes. Still,
okay.
Yes.
You are one person.
I killed the other half of the twins in the womb, so it's just me.
All right. Well, we'll have to do another follow-up episode on that. But again, how are you? Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to be these three things, and if there were things that maybe preceded it to kind of level set. You're welcome to talk about that.
Well, mostly if you're interested in the Bon Voyage, the cheeseburger tour, if you will, of Greater Houston, it mostly began as interest in that disappearing architecture of old burger shacks, Burger Hut, Burger Barn, Dairy Barn, those sorts of things that at one point were very, very common. And what you learn is by traveling around Greater Houston, there are still a few of those places left. And so I was very interested in visiting those places and taking photographs of the building to kind of preserve that, because that gets into the cultural historian part of it, preserving that digitally. And then I needed a better reason to just drive around Houston. I thought, well, if you could combine the visit with actually doing it on your lunch hour and having a cheeseburger, I thought that was a decent idea.
That seems like it would be. I mean,
right,
in and of itself,
right?
Again.
Who doesn't like a good cheeseburger? So you can begin with that. And I thought I would just do it at once, one a day for 30 days in the month of August. I actually started on August 2nd, but because August has 31 days, I'll end up with a set of 30 and maybe a bonus. I have one restaurant that was on my list initially, and I did not realize that they were out of business.
Oh, wow.
And so I've been there, and I took the picture of that building, but I haven't been able to have their burger. So we'll see. I think people like it. I'm getting not a ton of likes. I don't have a lot of followers and things of that nature, but I've had people tell me offline, much like you yourself, saying, hey, I think this is kind of a cool thing, or I'm going to follow in your footsteps. I have a friend who's doing the same thing now in Dallas.
Oh, wow.
I have a local friend who is kind of following in my wake. He's visiting the places I'm recommending. Okay.
And you are familiar with a certain documentary, Supersize Me.
Yes.
So are you concerned?
That's, I've had several people. They tend to be older than you, Steve. It tends to be the senior citizens that are most worried about my health and my weight. So far, we're 18 days into it. So far, I've only gained about a pound. And what I've said to them in response is, I really don't want to know what's happening physiologically in order to make that possible. Eat a cheeseburger and fries, sometimes a malt with it, every day for 18 days so far, and yet I've only gained a pound. I'm not certain what's happening there. I'm just going to ride the wave because the results are the results.
Right. And then a lot of times you hear people say, like, whenever they do something, I've never felt better. I've never, I'm sleeping like, and are you having great dreams?
That is the case. It's funny that you did not do any sort of pre-interview with me, because I would have told you that, shockingly, I feel great. I feel great. I don't know. People have also said, aren't you tired? Aren't you tired of having a burger every day? And there was one point so far where I didn't feel like I was excited when I sat down to eat it. But I got over that very quickly. I got over it, and it's been more of almost a high each day.
Oh, wow.
To go, because you get excited, right? It's a new place, and it's and it fits with the latest in the model and all those kind of things. And so it's actually been great.
Man, that is amazing. In regards to the burger, do you have a certain way that you like it? A lot of people, they talk about the medium rare.
Right.
The rare,
Right.
some people like because you get the nutrients. Some people don't like it because, they worry about the health aspect of that.
Sure.
How are you getting your burger?
I'm not a burger connoisseur. I'll start with that. So
okay.
I have always liked my burgers very plain, meat and cheese, mayo, mustard, ketchup. And I thought since we're into the methodology of this whole thing, Steve, I thought I would order the burger that way everywhere. And it's kind of the equivalent. A friend of mine said it's kind of like ordering a cheese pizza. You sort of want to level set at that restaurant's original burger, right?
Okay.
Whatever they say is their original burger.
Right.
And that lasted for about 2 weeks. I was avoiding the bacon burgers and the chili cheeseburgers and those sort of things. And then I got turned on to a place called Tornado Burger. Not sponsored, by the way.
Okay.
Tornado
Yep,
Burger
yep,
in
good call.
Stafford, which is just outside of Houston. And it was recommended to me by an old school friend of my brother's. And it was wonderful. It was onions, garlic, and jalapeno baked, into the patty, into the meat.
Right.
And it was the best burger I have had so far on the Bon Voyage tour. So I'm allowed to break my own rules, I think, is what the answer I've arrived at.
I think that's fair enough. I think that, it almost sounds like you're doing kind of an Atkins. Would you say that, and that could be why you've only...
Except for the bun and the fries and the malt.
But there are some good proteins in the malt.
Definitely plenty of protein. I think part of it was I'm not a picky eater per se. I just like what I like, and I like things mostly plain. So I would eat Subway almost every day.
Oh, wow.
And so that's not really a dramatic change from the amount of bread and the amount of calories and the amount of fat and all that sort of thing. So now I'm not going to tell my cardiologist that I did any of this.
Well, he may know now. I mean,
I don't know.
We don't have a lot of followers, but
I'll worry about that after August.
And it's only one time at one place, right? I mean, you're not. Are you not repeating anybody?
Repeat business? No, although I'm tempted. I'm tempted with Tornado.
Oh, there have been some famers.
So also within the 30 days, I didn't have 30 restaurants coming right out of the gate. And so part of it to me was I wanted friends to recommend to me places I had no idea existed.
Okay.
And so that's really the organic part of it that's kind of taken over for this back half of the month is I'm out of places. I'm certainly out of places I can reach within the hour that I have at my office. Uh-huh. And so I've got to plan, how am I going to get to Rosenberg to go to their little burger hut?
Wow. Oh, so that's part of it. You got it, the hour.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is great.
Yeah. I think it's fun. It's mostly been me eating alone, which is not any different than my normal lunch hour. But every once in a while I'll have like a special guest star. Somebody else will say, hey, I've been meaning to go with you.
Oh, nice.
And since you're going to this one nearby, or my wife and I went to Galveston,
Oh.
and we had a burger at the Gumbo Diner down on Seawall, and had their hangover burger. So very different from the plain cheeseburger.
Certainly.
So, yeah, all kinds of stuff on that one.
And is that part of it? The journey of just kind of doing this on your own? I mean, I know you said you've had some guests, but what happens? You get to the end of the month. Is there any chance that this will continue beyond? Are you sticking with?
So I've had a couple of people ask me what is next. Is there a taco tour, for example?
Oh,
because
I can recommend some
Burger,
of those.
right down the street, same street, Murphy Road. They also operate Tornado Taco. Ooh. And I know, right? You say, "Ooh, taco sounds good." Taco's not really my thing, though. So I intend to. This will be it. This will be it after this 30 days.
Well, I love it. And it's been a fun to look at it on your site, because you do kind of go over and talk about each kind of
Right.
thing. So I would recommend anyone follow. And what is your handle if someone did want to follow you?
You can mostly find me at Facing Backwards. Facing Backwards on Twitter and Instagram. Of course, Donald Hayes on Facebook. And I'm really doing the Bon Voyage strictly on Instagram, and it's auto-populating to Facebook. So you can see it all there.
Nice.
You can search for the hashtag Bon Voyage. It's a little, I love clever wordplay. And so twist on the French Bon Voyage with the hamburger bun.
Oh, yeah.
So
Excellent. Well, you've certainly thought of everything. And was this thought out, or was it really kind of woke up and said, sometimes it's just good to brush your teeth with the opposite hand,
Absolutely. I've never heard it described that way, but that is absolutely what it was. One of those things that just tickles the back of your mind. Oh, I need to make time to do that. Wouldn't that be cool if we did that, or if I did that? And just try it. Just try it and see what happens. And no matter what, I've had a great burger every day in the month of August. And then I've also got pictures of the inside and the outside of these little places. And sometimes today I ate at Stanton City Bites, just outside of downtown.
Right.
And that is a family-run establishment. And that family has been in that building. It started as a grocery store in 1961. And I was served by Jonathan, the grandson of the original owner.
Oh, wow.
And so you get a little bit of some of the history is on the walls and some is in the people. And it's just, I don't know. I like all of it because I love the storytelling aspect of it.
Well, I love it. If you wanted to equate this interview to kind of a bun, since we're keeping it, or just kind of a burger in general, I think that is the top bun.
Top bun, okay.
So now let's kind of get to the meat, if you will, and let's talk about your collecting.
Okay.
So I know that that's something that you've done, and I know that there's a couple of stories, but kind of give a little bit, what is it about collecting that tickles you, to continue that word, and
Sure.
Where is it kind of taking you?
I was so tempted to volley it back to you and say, well, tell me, Steve, what part of my collecting is the most interesting to you personally?
Okay.
I know you're a rock and roll guy, though. So if I were to start anywhere other than 80s photo sleeve, vinyl, and 45s, probably be remiss. So I'm going to start with that.
Excellent. That is a
I'm
good choice.
I'm a thrift shopper, and Houston is a magnificent thrift market, and has been for a long time. You would think maybe right now, okay, sure, COVID, everybody's been at home, everybody's cleaning up their act and turning loose of junk, and some of that is true. But just Houston, the kind of market that it is, where housing is affordable and people have access to all kinds of amazing things, 30 minutes in any direction, and you have older neighborhoods butting right up to, or regentrified sometimes within the same neighborhood. And my office is in Midtown, so you're right there around River Oaks. And there's a Goodwill store on Westheimer. And if you walk in that store, you can kind of feel the energy of those surrounding neighborhoods. The Montrose neighborhood and the River Oaks neighborhood, the Heights neighborhood.
There's a lot going on.
There's so much great stuff. And a lot of it ends up on the shelves at Goodwill. And so, I have way too many collections of all sorts of different stripes. What I would consider my core fandoms. I'm a comic book collector, have been since I was very little. Star Wars is a big one for me.
Oh, wow.
Dungeons and Dragons, Lord of the Rings. For a long time, I said I was not a vinyl collector. I didn't have a record turntable, anything like that. But the appeal of the 80s as kind of this romantic decade, when you and I, as 80s kids, had the best of everything.
The 80s was amazing. Yeah.
I think we knew it. Like, it didn't take us long to kind of lament for the great music of 84 and 85 and that kind of thing. And 80s, of course, is back in a huge way now. And so I had two fellow collectors who their bread and butter was vintage stereo equipment and vinyl. And so when I'd go out, I'd look for things that would appeal to them, and they'd do the reverse for me. Board games, video games, etc., right? But sometimes I'd take a picture of things, send it to them, they're like, I've already got that. I don't need that one.
Oh, bummer.
Right. Yeah, you would think. Except then, as a collector, you go, well, it's too good for me I can't leave it on the shelf. Some other schmo's going to come in here and buy that. And so that's the collector's curse. You end up with a growing new collection that seems to grow on the daily. Every time you walk in a thrift store, once you're spread up across that many collectible areas, there's always something. There's always something you can find, right?
So that is interesting. So it seems like it's kind of a little bit of an ebb and flow. First you find it, then you think, do I need it? Or does anyone else that I know need it? And then it's like, no, those boxes didn't get checked. But what if someone else had it?
The magic, Steve, is in the what if. I have a daughter that's in theater. And so they're always looking for props. Our local high school theater happens to be doing a production of Chicago right now. And so I have a collection of phones, rotary dial phones that you and I grew up with.
Oh,
right?
nice. Yeah, those are good.
And everything. And what are you going to do with them? What do you do with a box of rotary phones? Well, you hope that they do not a production of Chicago because you need their,
no, it's too far back.
That's what they would want for that period. But you hope at some point they do something that falls within, the range of things that you might happen to have in storage, and then you've got it right there at your fingertips. Other than that, I think you hope that you just morph into a cultural museum of some kind. That somebody says, I want to put on a display at our museum of Dungeons and Dragons, gaming equipment.
Sure.
What do you have? And I've done that. I was able to contribute to a very small regional museum in the state of Louisiana that was doing an event called Chaos Theory. And every year, Chaos Theory has a slightly different twist. And one year they did Dungeons and Dragons. And so I had all this stuff to bring over and display and all that. And then it goes back into storage. It goes into the dark. You keep all your goodies away from the big three: heat, light, and moisture.
Oh, okay.
And so as long as they, stay there, and Harvey doesn't get to it, or Ice Storm Elsa doesn't come calling for you, then you have that at someday.
So, are you good at inventorying these on paper, or you just got it all up here and just
Mostly, I have an Excel type inventory of comic books because I have so many. I used to be able to tell you, yes, definitively what I owned and what I didn't own, what the holes were, what the voids are in any given collection. But after a while, especially as we age, that skill disappears. And so I really mostly have it in my head, and I wish I had more of an organized inventory system. I'm having things recommended to me all the time, apps that people use to track all of that stuff. I just haven't personally delved into that.
Right.
Yeah.
So that is good. And I think vinyl. So do you like the vinyl, the art, or the audio that's on the vinyl, or is it kind of more finding a rare one, like a Ronnie James Dio?
Yeah. No, I could tell you definitively it's not the rarity, although I like to think I can spot something that is out of the ordinary. If you were to go out and thrift today and start trying to collect vinyl, I hope you like Lawrence Welk. I hope you like
my grandmother did.
Mantovani or something. That's what, by and large, you pick up a stack of records at a thrift store, that's what you're going to find. Classic rock, on the other hand, very, very difficult to find. You have to luck into it. A lot of it is timing. Things are coming right out to the thrift store floor. And I thought of you just, a week ago, because I visited a Goodwill in the old Town and Country area of town. And I look over and there's a blue bin sitting on the floor of this Goodwill, and I can see 45s in it, photo sleeve 45s. Okay, so like a fly, drawn right to it, and I start looking through it, and it's got Joshua Tree, and it's got War, and it's got, great stuff, great condition. A lot of it still with the plastic on it.
Oh wow, yeah, that's pretty rare.
A lot of it marked like UK releases. Pounds on the cover, a sticker with pounds on the cover.
Oh man!
And they were dirt cheap. And I think out of everything, I left a little Oh, Bronski Beat. I left Bronski Beat. I was like, I don't need Bronski Beat, but I took the Eurythmics and I took Howard Jones because I was a Howard Jones fan.
You can look at the menu, but you
just can't eat. Yeah, I mean that. Mr. Positivity is what they call him. I don't know if you ever listen to satellite radio, but I do a lot of listening to satellite radio. 80s on 8.
Oh, nice.
What's the cassette era? Classic rock, classic rewind, classic. Vinyl. And those so those artists, I'm saturated in it all the time with those 3 presets.
Wonderful.
And so I get excited when I see it out in the store and I'm able to own it. Got an REO Speedwagon High Infidelity today.
Oh, yeah, man,
it's
that is good. Roll with the changes. Come on, crank that.
There you go.
So that kind of sets the story of kind of what a typical day is when you're going. If you could talk about the day that you kind of walked in and you found a yearbook, and I may not be getting the right order, but you kind of see something there and then see something else and then decide. So let's all of a sudden you walk in, you hear that ding, 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 ding,
right,
and then what happens?
Right. So the story you're talking about, that's happened to me more than once, but the story you're referencing was at a Goodwill Outlet, and I'll take 30 seconds. I'll tell you the difference.
Oh, you can take all the time you want.
All right. So Goodwill, if you're used to a traditional Goodwill, what they call a select store, that's where you walk in and they're probably in an old TJ Maxx or something like that, right? There's shelves and there's product on the shelves and it's all very, very traditional. Price tags on everything. Goodwill Outlet is something different, and it's a model that the Goodwill company, which is based here in Houston, started about maybe 18 months ago, 2 years.
Oh, wow.
And they took the same brick and mortar store and they took all the shelves out of it. And so now the product comes rolling out onto the floor in these giant blue dumpster-like bins.
Oh, wow.
So if you ever see a post that I've said where I'm at the bins today, that's what I'm talking about.
Oh, you got the bins.
The bins, right? It sounds sexy. It is not. It's gross. It's disgusting. Okay, it's the last thing you should be doing during COVID, right? Because you're digging with your hands through all these, mostly clothes. Mostly clothing is what shows up. But there's usually a bin that has housewares or books or, right? And so I typically go for the books.
That's a good place to start. Yeah.
It's less competitive.
Oh, really?
It breaks my heart that books are literally thrown into these giant bins. And it's their last hope. It's the last chance these books that you see are going to have a chance to be bought and be back on somebody's bookshelf.
Oh, wow.
Because after that, they're gone. Whatever Goodwill is doing, this is their destination of last resort.
Oh, my.
For this stuff. And so back to the story. I walk in and I find a yearbook, and it's from the 80s, and it is from a high school in Alaska. That's a little bit too far out of my normal geographic range. I like to look for things that are close by, things that I didn't go to high school here, but anything in the greater Houston area, the older the better typically, but anything is up for grabs. And so I looked at it, decided it wasn't for me, put it back in the bin. I go over maybe 2 aisles, and you got a row of bins, maybe I think it's like 12 bins in a row, and then you go to row, all the way to the other side. I go 2 rows away, and there is a photo album. And again, that's not incredibly uncommon to see a photo album at a Goodwill, but usually they're empty. But I look anyway because it's a reflex, right? You never know. The magic of thrifting is just that. You never know what's going to be there. And so I open this photo album, and it's got photos of a kid and his life in the 80s. Right? Jumping off, it looked like jumping off from a second floor railing, that stupid stuff that we all did that somehow we survived. I don't know. But it had a name in it. And so that's a little bit of evidence, right? Of dirt. It's a clue. Okay, so now the historian in me is like, okay, wait a minute. Let me figure out what's going on here. And I take the name and I go back to I saw something in it. I think he had written his address, and his address was Alaska. And I was like, come on. So I go back to the yearbook 2 aisles away and open it up. And sure enough, high school in Alaska, all the inscriptions made out to James. James matches the photo album. Oh, wow. So now I've got him. And it's a fairly uncommon name. I don't know if I may pull a blank on it. It's not really important.
Yeah, probably
but the thing is, I was able to look up that name, went down the street actually for a burger that day, believe it or not. It's long ago. It was more than a year ago, but having a burger, and the power of the internet, I search his name and I get a hit. I get a name and I get a Pasadena address and I get a phone number.
Oh, wow.
Right? And so I call the phone number. The guy answers. And I'm saying, then you're stuck in that awkward space of, now I have to explain to you this. And I even led with, okay, this is going to sound really weird, but just hear me out.
That's a good place
right?
to start.
I'm out of Goodwill. I found this stuff. I think it belonged to you. And the guy says he wanted to see the pictures, I think, as far as I can remember. And then he says, I lost all of that stuff in a divorce. He said, I thought I would never see any of that stuff again. You have done me a real favor.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, that's
the golden egg of collecting.
And he said, can we meet up? Can we meet? I said, absolutely, come in. And we met just right over by the Pearland police station right over there.
Oh, nice.
And made the switch. And I asked him to pay it forward. He wanted to pay me for it.
Oh, wow.
Even though, I mean, it cost me 33 cents a piece, Steve. I mean, books are 3 for $1 at the Goodwill Outlet. It cost me 66 cents. And he was going to give me $100. And I said, dude, pay that forward.
Yeah.
Right? That's the kind of looking out that I would want someone to do for me.
Oh, yeah, no, most definitely.
Good looking out, we used to say. So that's it.
How long had he been looking for that stuff?
He never said he had given up on it. He'd given it. He didn't really tell me how recent the divorce was or any of that. And I didn't want to pry.
Yeah.
But I got the sense that it was long enough that anything he'd been missing, he assumed was gone to the four winds, Huh. And so for it to come back to him in that way, I think it moved him. It moved me.
Right.
To hear his response.
And does that like set the bar? Is that now going to be, every time I find something, man, I wonder if it's going to end that? Or is it really just kind of, let me just kind of search and see where this goes? And
yeah, probably the latter, closer to the latter, because you can't plan for it. And the interesting thing there, and it's like looking for anything else, needle in a haystack, okay? So I don't go into thrifting expecting to see anything in particular. Right, I have a wish list in my head. Kiss Love Gun from 1977 is on that list, and I found it. I found it at a Goodwill. Yeah, with the inner sleeve and everything. Didn't have the little cardboard gun, but otherwise it was great. And that was a big time influential album to me when I was growing up.
Yeah,
it was my first exposure to Kiss, and it was magnificent, right? And eventually, I found one at Goodwill for I think it was either $1.99 or $2.99. I mean, at that price,
Yeah. And do you just pause and think, why would anyone give this up?
So, yes. And what I have found over time, things that are personal in nature, and that can not just your yearbook from high school, but I found a set of Judy Blume, Judy Blume, the author, writes a lot of that adolescent
fourth grade nothing
fiction. Yeah, it tells of fourth grade nothing, Super Fudge, all that stuff. Loved her growing up. I had a whole set of the Dell Yearling paperback Judy Blume stuff. My fourth grade teacher, hi Mrs. Kennedy, read that to us when we were in fourth grade, and I loved it. And I found a set of Judy Blume books at a regular Goodwill, but they were all on a bookshelf. And as I started to take them out, I always look inside the front cover. So A, they were all signed by the author. And B, that author had written a personal inscription in each book, and I think I had 4 or 5, to, I think her name was Judy.
Huh.
Yeah. And so I found Judy, and I gave her books back. and more often than not, what you find out is it was an accident. Those things were never supposed to go to Goodwill. Oh, I think in Judy's case, she had a sitter or something that was helping them with like a garage clean out or something. They were moving and they needed help, and they had some unskilled labor there helping them, and things got put in the wrong box.
Oh, wow.
And off they go. And you tend to just, you count your lumps. You take the L at that point. Dang, I wish I had that back. But then you get to, if the magic is right, you get to be the person that goes back, hand delivered Judy's books to her in Missouri City.
Wow.
So,
and in regards to, I guess, like other stories? Is there like another, like, what do you think would be a quintessential? Like for me, that's those two stories I think are quintessential, but you've done more stories maybe than you've shared. And I haven't necessarily seen all the ones you've shared, but in regards to, throughout this whole thing, I mean,
Yeah.
and then I guess it may be even kind of a same part, but what is the real heart? Like where is the collecting?
So the collecting is tied to, the returning of memories to people is important. And so historical preservation is also important to me. And a lot of people look at what I collect and they say, you're trying to relive your childhood. You're buying up everything that you had, everything that you wanted and never had. And there is an element of truth to that, only in that I had an amazing childhood, right? We weren't wealthy by any standard, but we had access to some great stuff. My dad is the one who kind of fostered our love of comic books, got us comic book subscriptions that came in the mailbox every month, that sort of thing. And it was important to him because as a young man in the mid-'60s, he went into the Navy in 1967, and his mother, he had a great comic book collection. If you think about what he might have had, a Marvel collector in the early to mid-'60s, come on. Captain America, Fantastic Four,
That's gonna be
Spider-Man.
the whole,
right?
where it all started.
It would pay for a child to go to college these days, easily. And his mother put him all out the curb while he was in the Navy.
Oh, wow.
And he never forgot that, and he never really forgave her for that.
Oh, wow.
And so that becomes a linchpin of his connection to us as kids, my brother and I, keeping the collection, and it being valuable to us, not in the monetary sense, but that's ours. That's our thing that we build together. And so all of it is tied into, even the burger tour is kind of a nostalgic, not a pining for the old days and wishing we could return to that and giving my America back. It's not that. It's a celebration of those common threads that we were able to enjoy as kids in the 60s, 70s, 80s, right? Just trying to rebuild that feeling of, remember what that was like to go to a soda fountain or go to a drive-in movie or whatever.
Yeah, and that makes me think about, is this trying to hold on to analog? And as we move more and more into the digital world, and does it bother you that we're becoming more digital and this is a way to kind of keep your hand in?
Yeah, not at all. My quote unquote record collection that I was not supposed to ever have began with a collection of laser discs.
Oh,
you remember?
Those are
right. And so those are, it's an archaic technology. It didn't even really last in the marketplace that long. Laser discs I'm talking about, but they happen to be exactly the same size as an LP. And I thought, how cool would that be? I don't have a lot of room at my house for like movie posters, the really big movie posters. But I thought I could do that. I could collect laser discs, and I could put laser discs up on my wall in an album frame, and they'd fit. And then I actually do have a Laserdisc player. If I ever got the yearn to actually play one, I could play it.
Nice.
But that led into the art and everything that's on a Laserdisc or a vinyl album. But what I should tell you in terms of it going away or preserving that archaic technology, vinyl's back, baby, in a big way.
Yeah, for sure.
You go to Walmart or you go to Target right now. There's a whole section. Yeah. And it's all the good stuff, right? They're not going to release the dogs. They're going to give you, Journey's greatest hits, and they're going to give you the Joshua Tree and Under a Blood Red Sky, right? And so you can have the best of both worlds right now. You can go pay the $25 and get the new pressed vinyl collectors, Love Gun. You can get the orange vinyl press.
Oh, wow. That's right. They did do colored ones.
That's
I forgot about that. So, but again, so you're good with digital? You're not...
Nothing against digital at all.
Nice.
Yeah. A lot of comic collectors that I know have gone to the reading of digital comics. And that's more of a personal loss to me, because I think we will come to a point where making things out of paper and distributing them at comic book stores is no longer viable.
Right.
You know what I mean? We're not quite there yet, but it's kind of the same. If you think of newspapers, the newspaper business and where it is right now, people have been saying newspapers dead for the last, 20 years, and you can still get a newspaper.
Yep.
So it's not overnight, but there is a tactile thing that when you open an old book or an old comic book, and I've spoken to Rotary clubs and things like that about it in the past, is bringing them some of the old comics and having them close their eyes and open a comic book. And that slightly sweet, decayed smell of old paper that you get is a very sensory experience. And it's enjoyable, right? It takes you, because smell is so intimately connected to memory, it takes you right back to what it used to be like to hide out in your attic space and be reading, comic books because mom thought you were studying or whatever.
Excellent. Well, I love what you do in regards to the collecting, and I think the stories, and I hope that, as you go forward, you will be bringing more wonderful trinkets that have been lost, whether intentionally or unintentionally, and brought back home. I'm sure it's a pretty moving moment.
You always, the looking never stops. You know what I mean? Just having that eye on things. I'm not in there to make money. You know what I mean? I'm not a flipper. I'm not really a reseller. I have resold some things that don't belong to my core fandom, but that's not really what it's about. And so when you free yourself of that, then you're just there as a dispassionate observer, and you're looking at a bin full of history, so to speak, right? Some very, very recent history, but you never know. I found a dictionary from the late 1800s.
Oh, wow.
It's the single oldest thing I have ever found at a Goodwill and cast into a bin. Can you imagine taking something 120 years old and throwing it? Anything, doesn't it? Book, anything, and just tossing it aside and hoping you can get maybe 33 cents for it.
Right.
That doesn't seem right to me.
No, I agree with that. So then we move now to I guess we probably should have started at the bottom of the burger, but...
That's right. I've never been in food service, Steve, but I assume you have to start with that bottom bun.
But the third thing that you do that is very unique and certainly a very cool thing is you call yourself a pop culture historian.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So I know of your love of certainly sports. Is that another category, or is that in the pop?
Actually, it's related, but I'm not really a sports fan. I know people who are much, much bigger sports fans than I am. So again, it tends to lend itself more to the architecture, the Astrodome, right? The memories of growing up as a kid in Southwest Louisiana, where we had no professional baseball team. And so what we could tune in on AM radio was we got to hear the 1986 Astros kind of blow it there, right? We all went through that. It bled across state lines, that damage that was done to us. But Houston, being 2.5, 3 hours away from where I grew up, was accessible. Right, we made a good number of trips over the years to Houston, and so Astroworld and the Astrodome and the greater Astrodomain around it was our Disneyland. It was a mythical place to us, and I never had the experience that a lot of my fellow historian friends have had, where they lived here. They lived down the freeway in Pasadena and Deer Park and LaPorte, and they could get a season pass, and they went 50 times one summer. I don't have anything like that. I went maybe 20 times, maybe. Right. But it made an impression. The park itself, the imagination, which I learned later. I didn't know as a kid, right? You don't know who Judge Roy Hoffines was.
Oh, yeah, right. You hear the names, but yeah.
Yeah, you go to college at U of H maybe, and you see his name on a building, and then you start to put together, oh, he was somebody of importance. And then you learn all the other things behind that story of how Houston came to even have the eighth wonder of the world and Astroworld and all these other great things. And so that collecting aspect is trying to preserve the memory of Astroworld, what it was, what it represented to us, the great times that we had there, and just kind of keep that alive. It's a weird thing that it seemed to me growing up to be so ingrained in Houston's personality.
Yeah, I think the size.
37 years 1968 to 2005, 37 years, and then it was gone. And you drive by it, and the bridge is still there. It's a bridge to nowhere. It's a dirt lot where I think the rodeo uses it for parking.
Yeah, I mean,
it's absurd that we've not been able to do anything even close to that. You can talk about preserving it all you want. Six Flags made a business decision in 2005 to cast it off. Mm-hmm. Okay. But then nobody in the third or fourth biggest metro in the United States doesn't have a theme park like that. What's going on there? Huh. You know? And so that piece of it is trying to build backwards. And collect what I can, mostly of the, not the tail end Looney Tunes stuff. That doesn't speak to me personally as much. I don't have anything against it. Mm-hmm. It's just not my jam. But the early days, 1968 to about 1984, you know, they used to have my holy grail. You haven't asked this question, Steve. Shame on you. My holy grail of collecting when it comes to Astroworld is Astroworld's mascot, Marvel McFay.
Oh,
okay. I don't know.
I forgot about Marvel.
I'm going to give you some space to sing his theme song. I don't think that's going to happen. Okay, so Marvel McFay, very flamboyant, very, very 70s. Amazing. Concept drawn by a guy named Rolly Crump. Rolly was an ex-Disney Imagineer, and Judge Hoffheinz got him, as he did. He pulled artisans from all kind of different areas, right, to create the original Astroworld concept in 68 and all those characters. And then a few years later, I think 70, 71, Marvel McFay was introduced at the Astrodome at a football game.
Oh, wow.
And he was on the commercials and everything else. He was this outlandish space gypsy. Kind of looks like Yosemite Sam, red hair, big red beard, but huge hat with tassels and gypsy
just
clothing.
Blank on what, yeah.
Yeah. So, and he had a stage show, Marvel McFay and His Enchanted Friends. And then they also had Marvels that would walk around the park and take the pictures with you and stuff. Okay, so I have found out through the course of historical research that there were at one time 3 Marvel McFay costumes. And the Six Flags Company, around 1984, phased out Marvel as the face of the park. And so all those heads and costumes and stuff that the kids wore, 18 and 19-year-olds that worked at the park, have said to me, I wore Marvel during the years of 76, 77.
Oh, wow.
Right? And so I've developed a list of everybody that ever had that head on, because that's how you build that story backwards, to try and find out what is the last resting place of those 3 Marvel McFay costumes. So I wish I had an amazing story to tell you about walking into a Goodwill and finding the head of Marvel McFay. That has not happened. But what has happened is, in activity on various Facebook groups, a Facebook group called Astroworld Employees, a place where I don't even belong. I never worked there. I'm a squatter there, but they allowed me in.
Oh, wow.
And so in asking about once a year, hey, does anybody know what happened to Marvel McFay? Several people said, we saw the costumes toward the end and they were in a trash heap. They were destroyed.
Oh,
we think
some would be sad, and that is sad, but that sounds like a dream for you because it's somewhere out there.
Right. Yeah. The hope that it's they saw it wrong, or right after that, right after they saw it in the pile, somebody went and grabbed it. Right. You don't know. But the best evidence we have anecdotally is Marvel didn't survive. But here's the great part, Steve, is when I told this story most recently, I got a lady named Yvonne, I'm not going to say her last name, but Yvonne, who wore the head of another of Marvel's Enchanted Friends for 7 or 8 years. She wore the head of Harpo Pig. And guess what? She still had 30 years later in her attic.
Oh, come on.
The head of Harpo Pig. And she messaged me and said, I always wanted to do something with this, and I don't think it's ever going to happen. Would you like to have it? And I was like, tell me where you live. I'll be right there. I'll be right there. Way. And sure enough, she met me at the door with this giant. And it's like
mammoth, right? I mean,
oh yeah.
I mean, that's
Marvel was the biggest.
Than life.
They all say Marvel was the biggest and Marvel was the heaviest. But imagine, even 19-year-old Steve Garris wearing in the heat of Texas summer, wearing this costume and this giant head and walking around and having to be personable. I mean, crazy, right? But they did it. And most of the people that talked about it, they relished it.
Oh, wow.
They almost universally, those were great times to them. They know they were part of something special that Houston had. So, yeah. So at some point, I'm going to show, we have an Astroworld art show coming up. I don't know if you knew this or not, but here's the lead in for it. There's going to be an Astroworld themed art show. It's a free show. It's going to take place at St. Arnold Brewing Company, downtown Houston.
Oh, yeah. Is that near Sawyer Park, kind of?
Pretty close.
Yeah.
Pretty close. And it's going to be November 27th, 28th. It's the Friday and Saturday immediately after Black Friday, after Thanksgiving.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And it's really got two facets. I'm working with Juan Salazar, who is the owner of Super Happy Incredible Toys in the Heights. Juan is a toy guy, and he's also an Astroworld alum. He actually met his wife there working at Waterworld. So, again, Astroworld owns a special place. Special place in his memory. And he paints. Juan is also a painter. Okay. And so he's painted amazing, I call it impressionistic, but I'm not an artist, but of the Texas Cyclone. And different things. He loves the old school Astroworld logo that you and I probably are the most familiar with. It's the one that has the stars at one end and it's Astroworld.
Yeah.
That's the logo that is the most meaningful to him personally. So he's painted that. So Juan is going to connect with the art community, and he's already done a lot of that. And there will be Astroworld themed art for purchase.
Nice.
And then in the back room, he's allowed me space to do a little Astroworld mini museum.
Oh,
so nothing for sale there, no tchotchkes. It's just going to be come in, look at the stuff, let the memories wash back over you, and then go back outside and have another beer.
Oh, this is amazing. And when is it? What's the day again?
November 27th and 28th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as a kid, I remember Excalibur.
Loved Excalibur.
Was a, but then do you remember the second name?
It was
rather the first name. The first name. Okay, Excalibur was second.
Are you talking about Dexter Freebish?
Nice.
Yeah. Dexter Freebish electric roller ride. I don't believe I ever went on it. It by the time I was of height to go on a roller coaster, Dexter Freebish was gone. And you may know this. There's actually a band called Dexter Freebish. They spell it differently, but there's a Dexter Freebish band that kind of allows that memory to live on in a way.
I do know that band. Very close to that band.
Do.
Yes,
I'm sure you do. So I never got to go on that. I was terrified of grease lightning. I did not want to go upside down. I didn't know the physics of how that worked. But eventually I did them all. I did what they had available. Right. In my memory, Accelerate, you remember Accelerate?
Sure.
And Excalibur were my two favorites. I would ride those over and over and over and over.
They were so good. It's loved them. Yeah, you'd kind of like, this is a nice ride, roller coaster, but then when you got down to the bottom and it just whipped you.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Yeah. And I have the entry exit sign for Accelerate. That's one of my Astroworld memorabilia pieces, and it's big. The biggest thing I've ever owned, I had a gondola from the Astroway, the cabin that you got in that took you from one corner of the park way up high, second only to the Astro Needle in terms of how high you would go up in the park. And then it would land you over, I think it was, Alpine Village on one corner, and then like Oriental, they changed the name a couple of times, but Oriental Station or whatever they called it on the opposite end. And so for a period of time, I owned one of those. I bought one from a local guy who had bought trailers of stuff in 2005 from the auctions, and then he dumped it in a field. He just signs and cars, and he just put it out there as it was an investment. He really, I love the guy, but he doesn't have a love for the park.
Right.
He did it as a business venture. But he was more than happy to sell me one of the gondolas, which I then had somebody pressure wash, and I had an upholstery company that's down on Highway 6 that is run by a guy who happened to be in the works department of Astroworld for 24 years. He was in parks maintenance. So nobody better to put you some new seats in your Astroway Gondola than the guy who actually would have installed seats at the park. So that's some nice synergy, right?
Definitely, I'm getting some goosebumps over here.
Right? Fun stuff.
Wasn't there something about the Texas Cyclone was the biggest wooden roller coaster?
Yeah, it was modeled after a coaster from New Jersey, I believe. And at the time, a lot of people think Texas Cyclone was an original ride at Astroworld. It was not. I believe it got there in 76. But yeah, I think it was the largest wooden coaster at one time.
I think there's something that like, yeah. It would bang you around, but
oh yeah.
it was,
that was part of it though.
Yes.
You're paying for that amount of banging. Yeah, lots of love for the Cyclone. I don't own too much Cyclone stuff. I had a matchbook that had the shot of the coaster on one side and then the Texas Cyclone logo on the other. I let that go to a friend because he had a 50th birthday, and his wife was like, "What do you have?" And I'm like, "I've got this, and he'll love it." And I know he doesn't have it because he has coveted my matchbook before. He's told me he wanted it, so I gave that to him. But the chunks of wood. This same guy that I'm talking, the upholstery guy, has a chunk of wood with white paint flaking off of it. That was on the Texas Cyclone. Yeah.
What was the wood? Do you know the type of wood? I don't know a lot of wood.
I don't know. Yeah.
I endured a lot.
Yeah. I wish more of that stuff was like common knowledge. Like there was a reference database. I'm sure people are going to say, Google it, what's the Wikipedia page say for Texas Cyclone? And it might say it there, but that's the kind of thing that I don't know. That's why I don't call myself really a true historian, like a student of that kind of lore, because I don't have all those facts. I'm more about the feelings, the memories, the recreation of a setting, a scenario.
Yeah, the visceralness.
Yeah. I own Judge Roy Hoffhein's own Astroworld Yearbook. Did you know that they made employee yearbooks for a period of time?
No, I did not.
Okay, so starting in 1973, before that there was like an employee newsletter, and several people still have some of those. So very, very precious. Yearbooks and newsletters alike, very precious to the people that work there. But starting in 1973, they published a yearbook, very much like a high school yearbook, but only the employees of Astroworld got them. And so you're talking about a scarce number to begin with, right? A very limited number that were made. And then of that, here you are, 15 years, 16 years since the parks closed, but they stopped having yearbooks in the mid-90s. So if you went back to 1973, that's how old I am. That's my birth year, 73. So almost 50 years ago, these things were out there. If you find them, it's fairly rare that you find them in the secondary market, right? $200, $250, right? I got Judge Roy Hoffhein's own volume 1 of his yearbook with his name embossed on it. Because I heard about an auction. It was an online auction not that long ago, earlier this summer, at a place out in Hockley. And they had all this stuff. They had apparently come across some storage units with all kinds of stuff belonging to Roy Hoffhein's second wife, I believe, Mary Frances.
Oh, Mary Frances.
And they had put all this, and it was amazing stuff, Steve. It was pure Houston history for sale. And at what I considered bargain prices. And so I'm not, in case my wife's listening, I'm not allowed to say how much I paid for the judge. It was not a thrift price that I paid, but I got the one. And now that one joins, I have 5 or 6 other yearbooks from different years. And now there's a collection of those. And that's one of the things that I'm going to try to show at St. Arnold. If I can keep the beers from being spilled on it, obviously. It's not a museum setting.
It's not.
But yeah. But I'd like people to know that those existed and have a chance to see that stuff.
Yeah. You mentioned that, I know someone that Dexter Freebish band, but there's also Travis Scott that has kind of embraced Astroworld. I'm curious if you'd want to, certainly seems like the mascot would be something cool to have up on stage. He's got his big festival.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe he could...
I don't know, a McDonald's meal or something. I know of it peripherally. I will tell you straight out, I'm not a big, knowledgeable Travis Scott fan. Nothing against what he does.
No,
he's obviously a very talented artist. What I like about Travis Scott is he's a Missouri City kid. The whole reason he's stated publicly that he released an album called Astroworld, and then he did an Astroworld Music Fest that had some of the same creative lineage. You could see it in the way that the Astroworld Music Festival was presented, is that core love, that memory that he had of going to the real Astroworld Park when he was a kid. And he's celebrating that, and he's making quite a pile of money off of it too. So I have nothing but love for Travis Scott. Now, what it's done in the collectibles market is something different, because anything associated with the word Astroworld has dramatically escalated in price.
Sure.
Although his album was 3 years ago, and so now it's somewhat receded.
Right.
But you still, if you go on Craigslist, or you go on Facebook Marketplace, and you look for Astroworld, you probably have 5 Travis Scott related items before you ever get to a vintage. You got to throw the word vintage in there or something to help you with that search.
Parse it out. So.
Yeah. So mixed bag to me. It brings it kind of back to the zeitgeist a little bit. People start to talk about Astroworld a little more, and they reminisce. But there's also a lot of that's not the real Astroworld.
There's always a purist angle to everything.
Every
right?
time.
It's like
every time. Because the humans get
in.
involved, and they want to ruin it, and they want to get their opinions. Can't, you want the love, right? The love. Some way for us to show that love. The judge is never going to see it unless he's looking down on it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's just for us. It's just for us that if we can recreate any part of that feeling that we had in going and just being in the park for a day. Maybe you were of age that you got dropped off, so you didn't have to even hang with the parents that day. I mean, that's a visceral thing. I've got one more great story. You want to hear it?
I love
it's an
it,
Astroworld
please.
story.
Yes.
Okay. When I was a kid, spring of 1990, I was a band kid, and every 4th year, our band took a trip to Disney World. But every other year out of 4, you went to Astroworld. And so in the spring of 1990, as a junior, I rode a bus over from the Lake Charles, Louisiana area, came to Astroworld for a day. I hung out with one of my band buddies, and we had the 80s teenage boy dream come true. We met 2 good-looking girls at the park.
This is great.
I had, for whatever reason, I had a skill that I could throw a hula hoop over a dog. It was a Spuds MacKenzie. You remember Spuds MacKenzie?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Right? Spuds MacKenzie sitting on a block of wood. I had the right something, right? The right stuff to throw this hoop and nail it. And so I ended up with 3. The limit was 2, but we actually took a break and came back, and a new kid was at the booth running the game. And so we had a friend take the other 2 away, and I won a 3rd one. So these 2 girls, I mean, they probably scammed us. Let's be honest. They saw us toting around these stuffed animals, and they're like, these guys got it happening. Let's see. And sure enough, they left with our Spuds MacKenzies later in the day. But the rest of the day, Steve, they rode rides with us.
Oh, nice.
And it was amazing, right? And I had no game as a teenager. So this is thrilling, right?
This is a day.
And when we're breaking up, so to speak, at the end of the day, do you remember how when you'd first come into Astroworld, there'd be an employee with a big camera there in Americana Square, and they take your picture,
sure,
and they put it on a little tiny, like a Viewmaster size slide, and they put in a little keychain that you got to look up to the light. Okay, so the girls had done that. They had a keychain.
Okay.
That was the memento they gave to me in
wow.
return. So very, very soon after, we were kings of the world, my buddy and I, riding back to Louisiana that night. Very quickly, their names disappeared, right? Couldn't remember anything. You know what stuck for 30 years, Steve? One of them had said Deer Park. She had mentioned Deer Park to me. And back in 1990, I didn't even know where Deer Park was.
Yeah, right.
Right? But that stuck. And the magic of Facebook, social media in general, it's a sewer. We know that. Here's what Facebook is good at doing. I still have that keychain. So that's number 1. I still have the evidence.
Have evidence. You can
have the clue.
You can see her.
Right? And I was able to take my iPhone, go stand outside and aim that keychain at the sun and use my iPhone to take a picture of that little slide. Okay? Then I joined a group called Citizens of Deer Park. 6 minutes it took, and I knew both of their names. I'm not kidding. I posted the picture. I told a brief version of the story and said, does anyone here recognize these 2 young ladies who were so great to us that day? And in 6 minutes, somebody says, ha, and tags one of them. She gets on immediately, goes, oh, yeah, that's me and my friend. And then it turns out that the friend is a Pearlander. She lives 8 minutes from my house. And we have, not, in that 30-year span, had never run into each other or spoken to each other. And I didn't even know their names at that point. I thought I had one name and I had it wrong. But they very quickly corrected me.
And had they kept in touch? Were they?
They had kept in touch. They are still fairly good friends. They were Facebook friends for sure. One still kind of lived in the Pasadena area, and the other one lived right as a neighbor of ours. Huh. Can you believe that? She and I, our neighbor, we had 5 friends in common. I mean, it's amazing that we didn't all play soccer together, and I just never knew that was her.
Wow.
But can you believe that? Does that happen?
It happens in your world.
I know, right? And that's why you keep doing stuff, because you're like, that was amazing. What else can we do? Right? You're on to the next next thing. But yeah, it feels like magic when you do stuff like that.
I'm over here, man. You're getting me all misty-eyed over here.
It's terrific. It's terrific. And I've stumbled across things like this before. And I can they don't always have the magical ending, right? When you're on a radio show, you're able to tell it and you're given goosebumps across the internet. But more often than not, it's still good. It's putting something good back into the world. We need stuff like that, don't we? To hold on to, somebody to look out for us, somebody to bring it back around.
I think you said it perfect, because there definitely is a lot going on in the world, and it sounds like minimally for a few moments, you've been able to, break all that and just have just a moment.
Yeah. It can seem frivolous, right? It's not consequential. Or is it? Right? Because if you're able to give something back to somebody and they remember those good times, right? It's something. You can't always quantify it, but there's something there that's special.
It is, and I think at a time when you have people saying that we're more divided than ever, whether politically or the digital, has us not talking in real space or whatever, it definitely is a reminder that we are connected.
Yep. There's common threads. I like to take a lot of pictures that you'll see this. If you follow the Bon Voyage, if you follow the burger tour, as much as I can do it, I take pictures of the restaurant with no people in the shot. And it's not just a privacy thing, and I haven't always been able to execute it perfectly. But the reason is, I want you to be able to put yourself in the image. I don't want you to get distracted by who's there and whether or not you know those people and that kind of, does that make sense?
Oh, that makes total sense. Yeah, no, yeah. I can totally respect that and understand what you're saying, because I think we do constantly just get in the who's that person or anything.
Right.
And you're able to give them that moment of just, just be in this space.
Take a look through this window and remember what it was like. The single best, I used to work for the city of Pearland, and the single best day I ever had as an employee of the city of Pearland was when 2 park supervisors walked in. I was the marketing guy. They walked into my office with a box of photos, developed it at Eckerd and Kmart and all that kind of stuff from back in the day, and some negatives and just different events and things, and 1 box of slides, 1 box of 2x2 Kodachrome slides. And I went, whoop, right, as a magnet, right to it, right? And I pulled one of them out. And I held it up to the fluorescent light in my office, and it was the intersections of Main Street and Broadway in Pearland in 1972.
Oh, wow.
And no people, but the cars and the corner drugstore that burned down years ago, right? That, Lady Borden ice cream. And you could see it had been hit in the early 70s or late 60s. It had been hit by a tractor trailer, and a portion of it had been rebuilt, and you could see the line where the colors of the brick changed, and they were crystal clear, Steve, from 1972. And it was a window into our local history. Yeah. And that's when it kind of hit me that's why those are so powerful. It's because you can put yourself right in there. Yeah. And there were dozens of them. They weren't all that good, but a lot of them were. And the story behind that was they were taken by an employee of the city Pearland was fighting annexation at that time. They didn't want Houston. There was one slide that had an artistic rendering of a monster with big scary teeth labeled as Houston about to gobble up little Pearland.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah. And so we don't know who it was, but they were a skilled photographer. They knew what they were doing, and they were taking pictures of the business, the tax base that existed in Pearland in 72. And most of those things are gone now. And we had stuff like one of the few that people were recognizable in it. We had 2 girls on horseback riding east alongside Broadway. So like you could see the street sign, Main and Broadway, and then there's these 2 girls riding horseback. And it's just, it's magic, right? Awesome. And if only every day we're at work, we're like that, right? But and those pictures have lived on. Like I ended up publishing some for the park's Facebook page, but the Pearland Historical Society got hold of it, and they have the capacity, some very skilled friends of mine work there, have the capacity to scan them, digitally clean them up, take the noise out, blow them up, super high resolution. They end up on the wall when Ronnie Killen, our local restaurateur, opens Killen's Burger. Ronnie is a Pearlander. Ronnie grew up here, and he has a love for Pearland history, because it's his family history. And he put those slides from 1972 were right above the order counter when he originally opened Killen's Burger. I think he's moved them now. He's got different signs. But, I mean, that's kind of special.
That is very, no, kind of. That is.
No kind of.
Yeah, that is very, very special.
And fun, right? It's fun to be able to, you think that's like lightning striking. Right. I'm never going to, but you always hope for it though. Mm-hmm. You always hope for that to come back around again. And you start to believe that as long as I don't stop looking, who knows what I'm going to find in somebody's attic, or, you start to get this, people will say to you, well, you're the only one I could think of when I found this. I thought of you. That means something, right?
Bite, yeah.
I'm safe harbor. I'll take care of it. I'll show it to people. Like people accuse me of being a hoarder. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if the crazy know they're crazy. I have no idea. But that's not how I see myself. I see myself as somebody who has a genuine love of all these things, of storytelling, ultimately. That's what I love the most. That's the common thread between history and comic books and genealogy and old buildings and everything else. It's the story of how that got there and who was there. And that's the part I love the most.
Well, I can't thank you enough, Don, for sharing your stories and sharing your passions.
Oh, my pleasure.
I think that, has it been a while since you've had one of these moments? Do you feel like you're on the verge of one coming up soon?
A tipping point. I don't think about it that much. Okay. I really don't. The latest thing was it was more memorable to me personally, and it was the 80s, the records, because it was a trove of them. It was an instant collection, if you want to think of it that way, between the albums and the 45s. But the great unknown of not knowing what's going to be there the next time you go. It wasn't there a day ago. Mm-hmm. So if you go today, that thing that you didn't even know existed until you see it. But the key is to act on it. You see it and you know it's something, right? Mm-hmm. Let's just see what it is. Let's open it up together and see what it is.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a perfect note to end on. And I think that is where life should be. What is tomorrow bring?
Man, voyage of discovery.
Nice. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. This has been Donald Hayes, the collector, the pop culture historian, and of course the Bon Voyage missioner to find. And look forward to seeing where the next post goes. I would definitely recommend following him. And what is your handle again?
You can find me at Facing Backwards, which is, if you think about it, is kind of that metaphorical, I'm turned around looking back at the past. Mm-hmm. That's what Facing Backwards is. So Instagram and Twitter at Facing Backwards.
Awesome. Well, we'll leave it there. Thanks, Don.
Thank you, Steve.
Today's music was brought to you by the great Texas band Dexter Freebish. The song Tomorrow, featured on the album Life of Saturdays.